All right, welcome to another edition of the False Files, where curiosity dictates the path to enlightenment. We've been talking about nuclear power.
Yes.
This is our second installment of that. And today we're going to talk about our perception of nuclear power.
Yeah, and really the question we're going to ask is, okay, we posed in the first video that we have a problem. Now, how did we get here? Because that's really what we want to know is, well, if this is a problem, why? How did this happen?
Right. Well, I know for me as a kid, right, you have the Simpsons came out in what, 1989?
Yeah. Longest running sitcom.
Of all time, right?
Of all time.
Of all time. Yep, that's correct.
33? Yeah, 33 years.
33 years now. So I perceive nuclear as something incredibly dangerous, right?
Growing up.
Right, as a kid, you could have radioactive material change your very DNA, turn you into a creature. The people that are in charge of it are people like Homer Simpson, who's a complete idiot, right?
Right, yes.
And just the whole idea of nuclear power to me was a bad idea.
Right. No, I get that. And see, I had a much different upbringing, right? As it pertains to nuclear energy. So my dad, he worked at a nuclear power plant for about 27 years. So my whole growing up childhood was filled with, nuclear power is good. Like, my dad has a job, the town is prospering, all of those kind of things. He would talk with his other friends and just at work about what was going on at work and what they were doing, and just that general sense of like, oh, these guys were, maintaining a plant, that just general safety. I mean, we had turned it into the plant we had there in my hometown. It was a park for all the kids would go swimming in, and had a visitor center, like. It wasn't this weird, scary, you don't go near it kind of thing, right? And that's what kind of people's perception was.
Totally was my perception.
Right.
I would have thought, look at these idiot kids. Their parents let them play near a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, it was literally Trojan Park for PG&E. It was right out front, and it was this massive park area. I mean, my aunt was married in the park. Like, it was... Oh, wow. Yeah, it was just... That's what you did.
Is she alive today?
Absolutely.
Oh,
alive and well. Yes.
Okay.
Alive and well.
And you played in this part.
Many times.
That explains a lot.
That's true. Yeah,
no.
That's true. But yeah, so I definitely had that kind of a unique upbringing, excuse me.
Right.
Where it pertains to this particular subject, that I know that 99.9% of people you talk to, they're not going to have that same experience of growing up right next to a nuclear operating power plant.
Right, because no one wants to.
Right, nobody wants to, exactly. And that kind of gets into the whole, what I believe is the reason why we have this issue today. The reason why we have this perception. So if you look at it, there's some kind of key seminal dates that we have, right? So you look back, your first date is going to be about is in 1979, and that's going to be the 3 Mile Island accident, right?
Okay.
Now, that accident, it didn't go full Chernobyl, right? That was the worry that it could have. It did not, but it definitely was a big incident, right? And it was here, on U.S. soil, right? So that's kind of people's first wake up to, oh shoot, this could be a problem.
So wait, can I interrupt you for a second? So there really was a time though when nuclear power was perceived as good.
Oh yeah, if you look back to and this is going to be just kind of conjecture, right? If you look back to literature from the 50s and even early 60s, right? Everybody was talking about the atomic age and about, atomic hair dryers, all of these kind of things that were going to happen, right?
Right.
And even to a certain point in the modern culture, you have that, right? Where you flash into some of these games like the Fallout series, right? It shows kind of like what would have happened in that kind of a nuclear age, right? If America had a real nuclear age and all that. And so that's kind of brought into the psyches of today's, young people like us, people in our age bracket. Right. But for the people in that era, you had their parents kind of all grew up in this, atomic energy is awesome, right? From the late 40s, 50s, and into maybe a little bit into the early 60s. But then you kind of see the shift, right?
Right.
And you see this shift with the 3 Mile Island disaster. Then much later, but it still plays on people's opinions, right? You have Chernobyl, right?
Right.
And that was a full meltdown kind of situation, right? With a lot of cleanup. There's still a contaminated zone to this day.
Right, I think they're just now finishing a dome to go over it.
Something like, yeah.
Or maybe it has finished now, but I know it's a world United Nations effort.
Right, exactly. So it's been this blight to that, region of the world for a long time. And that is it is a legitimate concern. But even over that too, you get to some of the media. Right, so the media, you brought up Homer Simpson, that kind of came out in that later 80s. But by then, really, sentiment had really already kind of shifted, right? You saw petitions coming through to close nuclear power plants, all of those, and that all started in about 85 to early 90 range, is when that all kind of started. Right, we got to shut this down, it's dangerous. But I would put forth that I think the major player in all of this was, what did you have before that? Right before all of those things, and even during that time, is you had an intense Cold War. And during that Cold War, basically what we told our kids through the, 70s and early 80s, and even in the late 60s, that whole time frame, right, is that Russia was going to invade, they were going to use nuclear weapons against us, and to go hide under your desk in the case of a nuclear explosion. Right. So just that word, the actual word of nuclear, is ingrained in these kids and these people that are now adults and now making decisions for the country and now on the boards and CEOs and all of these things that are dangerous. Right.
They're all
right. They were kids in in elementary school in the late 60s, early 70s. Now, by the time you fast forward to the early 90s, those are the people that run the world, right? Those are the people that are in the CEO spot, in that kind of spot. And so they all have this kind of, even if it's not acknowledged, this bias ingrained into it. I mean, if you take a kid in elementary school today and tell them every single day, this thing's going to be dangerous, they're going to grow up and believe that that thing is dangerous. Which, yes, a nuclear weapon is absolutely dangerous. But a nuclear weapon and a nuclear power plant are vastly different things, right?
It's funny because hiding under your desk creates a fear, but it doesn't create any form of safety from a nuclear weapon. Like, that extra layer there is going to do absolutely nothing.
No, it absolutely did nothing, but it instilled that fear, right? And it was that fear that I think led to a lot of that late 80s, early 90s. And that's really from that about 85 time period to the early 2000s, well, even to today. That's really when you see nuclear it kind of hit this wall. Because we were going through the late 60s, all through the 70s, and even into the early 80s, we were building nuclear plants. They were popping up all over the place. We had a good, growing, thriving industry. And then the ballots and petitions started. I remember one time, we had him over for dinner many times, but he was one of the top level executives there at Trojan. They would spend anywhere from $2 to $5 million a year running campaigns to try to keep the plant open.
And this is in the 90s?
Yeah, this is
even more money.
Yeah, this is in the 90s to run campaigns because you had all of these other negative ad campaigns, and literally every year for the state of Oregon, it was popping up. Close down the nuclear power plant. Close down the nuclear power plant. And so they were spending all of this money because of people's safety concerns that they had this nuclear power plant. And like we stated in the last video, there are some very legitimate safety concerns to be made for a nuclear power plant. But I think it's been overblown in the kind of psyche of America. Right. As you pointed out, the safety factors that we have, it just doesn't make sense that you would say, yes, we'll take this, but no, we won't take this. Yes, we'll take fossil fuels and all the CO2 and all of the pollution, all of the other problems that go along with it, but no, we won't take nuclear power because we're afraid of, mostly to me, what ends up being a boogie.
Right. I almost think of like an alien kind of like looking down, So we all know that aliens are real, right?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I picture them like looking down and seeing us, from the 1800s as such at that point, compared to today, such an archaic species to getting nuclear power, and they're like, wow, good job.
Right.
Right? And then it's like, oh, look, they're making headways, they're making some bombs. Okay, good, nuclear proliferation. Oh, wait, but don't stop making the nuclear power plants.
Right.
Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, it would be like, if you had just somebody from another planet come down, they're like, wait, you invented this technology in the late 40s?
Right.
To have clean energy that doesn't pollute your planet, that you don't have to extract out of the ground, and you stop doing all those things,
and fossil fuel. Right? Let's pump out the oil. Let's frack so we can get more natural gas. Like, let's use coal. Let's all these things that are definitely we know are a problem. I think that's the other argument, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, this is bad. Why do you think this is bad?
Right.
I'll
put the link into this video. So this guy did a TikTok video, right? And it was basically this situation, but different. So the alien comes down, and they're like, "Oh, we've heard of this guy called Jesus, right?" And the person from Earth was like, "Oh, really? You've heard of him?" The alien was like, "Yeah, he comes to our planet every year." And we go and we gather all the best chocolates, and we give him the chocolates, and he loves it, and he takes off, and we see him again in a year. And the alien goes, "What did you do the first time he came to Earth?" Oh! And then, obviously the guy gets that deadpan face, right? But it's just to show that, it's just to show that kind of outside perspective, right? It's just one of those funny little TikTok videos. It doesn't have any implication, but it really is that kind of, if you step back and think about it, like, holy cow, we invented this like 70 years ago, 80 years. I mean, this is not new technology. This is not cutting edge by any standard of measurement. And it's funny too, because when I talk to just people out in the world, most people still don't even realize that, like, in a nuclear power plant, all you're doing is generating steam.
Right.
They think somehow that, like, you're extracting the energy from
the plutonium,
whatever you're using. Like, that's something. Not everyone, but that is a common instances. Yeah. Right. It is a common misconception out there, and it has led to this point today. I think it was 2020, 2021, something like that. Still, half of Americans do not believe that nuclear energy is safe, and to me, they're incorrect.
Right.
And that's what we're here to do, right?
But I think the majority of politicians today.
Well, politicians would believe that just because people believe that, right?
Right. Well, yeah, then it's their constituents.
That's their constituents.
Well, the average age is like 67.
That's true.
So they literally went from nuclear good to nuclear really bad, and that's where they're at. So,
I think part of the problem is how we got here is we didn't have the real conversations about what nuclear power is, what it's about, and that's what we're trying to do here. If you looked at things like Tesla and Elon Musk, his car is great, but really the benefits have been the conversation around it. Nobody cared about a battery-powered car in 2010 or 2008, whenever it started. Right? Nobody even thought about it. Nobody cared about it. There were some fringe people that did. You had some early adopters, all of those kind of things through the 90s that were experimenting, but it was very much on the fringe. Right? And then Elon Musk and his kind of high profile, high media blitz, high, YouTube appearances, all of those kind of things started that conversation and that ball rolling, where it's now like half of America will say, "Oh yeah, I get an electric car tomorrow." You know what I mean? Like the conversation has vastly changed around electric vehicles over a decade.
Well, what's interesting too is you said how many millions of dollars were they spending back for?
Oh, it was like $5 million.
So their advertising campaign is to fight the misinformation.
Right.
Where a company like Tesla spends $0 on any kind of advertising. They just have it up there because, like you're saying, they have that conversation.
The viral buzz.
Right.
But you didn't have that. You couldn't make, if you were, let's say you were nuclear company X,
right?
All you had was traditional media,
right?
To where you have to be on talk shows, all this kind of stuff. But
now Gore hadn't invented the internet,
right? But now it's different. We haven't seen anything. Well, we'll get into that in another episode, but we haven't really seen any kind of renaissance, I would say, in the nuclear power industry in a long time.
Well, and I think, like you were saying, like a lot of the movies, I don't ever remember seeing a movie. I remember seeing movies that were cool that were geared towards fusion.
Right. Nuclear fusion always 10 years away. Yep.
Right. But I've never seen, then even that one's still like, I remember chain reaction and stuff like that. You still have this explosion and all this other corruption stuff, but I don't ever remember seeing a movie showing how nuclear power would change our lives for the better. It's only been how it will change our lives for the worse.
Right. It will only be, that post-apocalyptic, nuclear winter or whatever you have. And most of that was from atomic bombs.
Right.
But again, you put that word into people, you put that fear into people of nuclear warheads, which should be feared, right?
Right.
But then they correlate that to, well, this is just a bomb inside of a plant, which is just not true.
Right. Interesting. So, okay, well, I think we're going to continue this conversation.
Yes, we'll do that.
We're going to go a little bit more into just different topics, maybe talk a little bit more about companies doing something right.
Absolutely. There's a lot of buzz right now.
And I hope you found this kind of enlightening in the sense of, like, what you're being told sometimes isn't the truth, right?
Correct.
Sometimes good-intentioned people are misleading you. And I definitely think in this case, nuclear power is one that has just been drugged through the ringer on its reputation, when it should be solving our climate change problems.
So it should be, and it should really even be just an industry you look to as far as regulations and how the practices that you have to obey by in order to operate in that space. They have a very high standard.
Right. Yeah. No, I know it's almost impossible these days to even build a nuclear power plant.
Correct.
So, all right. Well, cool. We'll continue this later on, and just remember, only you can fight forest fires. It's Smoky Bear.
All
right. Until next time.